We all think we know the story of the crucifixion and resurrection. The main players, the events, it's all very familiar. But what if there's a whole other layer to it? What if the people we see at the cross, the thieves, the disciples, the women at the tomb, what if they aren't just historical figures, but are actually mirrors for us? That's the big, fascinating question we're diving into. We're going to look at this ancient, powerful story, not as some dusty history lesson, but as a living, breathing map of our own inner spiritual world. And our guide for this journey is this incredible 7th century text by a theologian named Maximus the Confessor. He had this brilliant idea that these biblical figures are actually powerful archetypes. They're symbols for the virtues, the struggles, and the different paths that exist inside every single one of us. So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the 2 thieves and the 2 paths they represent. Then, Joseph and Nicodemus, who show us 2 very different kinds of virtue. We'll explore the women at the tomb and what it takes to actually witness truth. Then there's the amazing rivalry between Peter and John. And finally, we'll get to Thomas, whose journey from doubt to knowing, well, it's a story many of us know all too well. All right, first up, the 2 thieves. Now, in this spiritual reading, they're not just 2 guys who got caught. No, they represent a fundamental choice point for the human soul. They show 2 totally opposite ways we can respond to suffering and judgment, a choice we face all the time.
So what's the difference? It's really simple. One of them accepts his situation, he owns it, and he asks for mercy. The other one, he just lashes out, blaming everybody but himself. And this is where it gets personal, right? This isn't about them anymore. It's about how you respond when things go wrong. Do you look inward or do you just point fingers?
So the grateful thief, he's the part of us that gets it. He recognizes there's a higher principle at play, what Maximus calls the law of the spirit. It's that voice of self-awareness that can finally look at its own mistakes, accept the consequences without making excuses, and genuinely ask for a better way. It's the moment we take radical responsibility for our lives. And then you've got the ungrateful thief. He's the archetype of the soul that's just stuck in the mud, in the law of the flesh. This is our pride, our ego. It's that part of us that just refuses to be accountable. It's that voice in your head that says, it's not my fault, it's theirs. It clings to blame because, let's be honest, that's way easier than the hard work of actually changing. And look, you can see it right here in the text how Maximus lays out these 2 laws, these 2 ways of being. So the point isn't that there were 2 criminals. The point is that these 2 choices, these 2 mindsets are at war inside us constantly. The real question is, which one are you feeding today? Okay, let's move on to our next pair and see how this idea builds. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. Now, both of these guys were followers. They were on the same team. But they represent 2 totally different ways of living out what you believe. Think about it. Joseph acts boldly. He marches right up to Pilate, a really risky, very public move, and asks for the body. Nicodemus, on the other hand, always comes by night. He believes, sure, but he's held back by this cowardly fear of what other people will think. One lives his virtue out in the daylight, the other keeps it hidden in the shadows. Maximus says Joseph is the one who has true faith and knowledge because he actually does something about it. Spiritually speaking, he's the part of our soul that actively organizes and protects our virtues, burying them deep inside us, not to hide them, but to keep them safe so they can grow deep roots. Now, here's what's so cool about this. The text explains that anyone who maintains this beautiful and good order within themselves is a Joseph. That turns him from just a person into a verb, an action. It's the state of aligning what you believe on the inside with what you do on the outside, no matter what it costs you socially. So that brings us to the tomb. What kind of a soul is actually ready to witness a real breakthrough, a personal resurrection? Well, Maximus tells us to look at the women who went to the tomb. They weren't just random followers. Each one represents a specific quality, a prerequisite for a soul that's prepared for a revelation. Just look at this lineup. It's like a spiritual dream team. You've got Mary Magdalene. She represents the soul that's been cleansed by actually doing the work. Then the other Mary. She's the quiet, contemplative soul. Salome, she's the one who has found peace, who has let go of all the drama. And Joanna, the meek, humble soul. Together, they show us that seeing the truth isn't some accident. It's the result of getting yourself ready. And you can see it right here in the source text where it breaks down these definitions. Salome means peace. Joanna means dove, which is a symbol for meekness. So why does this matter so much? Because they are the first ones to see the stone rolled away. Spiritually, they've already done the work to remove the hardness from their own hearts, which makes them open and receptive to a whole new reality.
Now for one of my absolute favorite pairings, Peter and John. When they hear the tomb is empty, they take off, racing to see for themselves. Maximus calls this a beautiful contest, and it's beautiful because they symbolize two essential and sometimes competing drives in our own spiritual lives.
So Peter is the active path. He's all about practical faith, the kind you build by doing things, through trial and error, just by living life. John, he's the contemplative path. He represents meekness and purity of heart, the state that allows you to receive direct insight. One is all about doing, the other is about knowing. And here's the thing. We all have both a Peter and a John inside of us. But, and this is the crucial part, it's a friendly rivalry. They push each other forward. As the text says, they run in tandem, each one trying to surpass the other. Action inspires contemplation, and contemplation refines our action. You need both. It's not a choice between them. It's a call to bring them together.
And this is just a fantastic picture of that balance. A complete soul, according to Maximus, runs with both Peter and John. It honors the part of us that needs to get out there and act and build, and it honors the part that needs to be still and listen. It's a dynamic dance, not some static state you arrive at.
And that brings us, finally, to Thomas. And honestly, he might be the most relatable one of them all. He just refuses to believe unless he gets proof. He represents the doubtful mind, that part of all of us that's a natural-born skeptic, the part that says, I'll believe it when I see it. And his journey is this really powerful three-step process. First, he doubts the story he's told. Then, he has a direct physical experience. He touches the marks of the nails. Maximus says these nails are actually the virtues we gain through practice, the ones that pierce our soul and change us. It's only after that personal, lived experience that he can finally confess the truth. The text here is just so profound. It says, Thomas is every doubting man who finds it difficult to believe that the resurrection of virtue takes place within him. This totally reframes doubt, doesn't it? It's not a sin. For the Thomas that lives in us, just hearing about truth isn't enough. We have to feel it for ourselves. Doubt is simply the starting line for a journey toward knowing something for real. So here's the big takeaway. The blaming thief, the fearful Nicodemus, the skeptical Thomas, they all live inside of us. But you know what? So do the grateful thief, the bold Joseph, the contemplative John, and the peaceful Salome. This ancient story, it was never really about them. It's about us. It's a timeless mirror for our own inner world. And when you read this story this way, it becomes this incredibly powerful tool for self-reflection. It allows us to ask ourselves, which of these energies is running the show for me right now? Am I running like Peter, just stuck in doing? Or am I listening like John? Am I hiding in the shadows like Nicodemus? Or am I acting boldly like Joseph? On your own journey, who are you today?